journey of English, a story of perseverance and growth. In the small town of Maplewood lived a young girl named Emily. She was an ordinary child in every way, except for one thing, her struggle with English. Every day, she would sit in her room staring at the textbooks filled with words she could hardly understand. Her classmates, like Michael, Sarah, and David, seemed to master the language effortlessly. They used words like elaborate and perspective, while Emily fumbled over simple phrases. Emily's parents, Jane and Robert, were concerned. "Emily," her mother said one evening, "English is important. It's the language of opportunity. If you want to achieve great things, you need to learn it." Emily nodded, but deep down, she felt like English was a mountain too tall to climb. In class, Emily's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, noticed her struggle. Mrs. Thompson was a kind woman with a passion for teaching English. "Emily," she said one day after class, "don't be discouraged. English is like a puzzle, and once you learn how to fit the pieces together, it all makes sense." But Emily couldn't shake her frustration. Words like irony and metaphor felt like foreign concepts, and grammar rules, with their endless exceptions, were even worse. She felt like she was always a step behind her classmates, who often volunteered to read aloud while she shrank into her seat, hoping not to be called on. One day, during recess, Emily sat on the swing, watching Michael and David discuss their favorite books. "You just have to get into the story," Michael said. "The words will come to you naturally." Emily wanted that. She wanted to lose herself in English, to feel confident when speaking, reading, and writing. But every time she tried, she stumbled. Words danced on the page, mocking her with their complexity. Then, one afternoon, something changed. Mrs. Thompson handed out a book to the class. It was Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. "I want each of you to read this," she said. "And I want you to write a reflection on what you learned about friendship and sacrifice." Emily hesitated. The book looked thick, and she wasn't sure she could get through it, but Mrs. Thompson smiled at her. "Take it one page at a time. Don't rush." That evening, Emily sat in her room, holding the book in her hands. She opened the first page and began to read. At first, it was slow. She had to look up words like humble and radiant. But as she kept reading, something magical happened. The story of Wilbur and Charlotte began to unfold before her eyes. She felt connected to the characters, and for the first time, English didn't feel like a burden. It felt like an adventure. As the days passed, Emily found herself reading more and more. She started to enjoy the process of looking up new words, writing them down, and using them in sentences. She began to see how English was not just a subject in school, but a way to express herself, to share her thoughts and feelings with the world. One day, during English class, Mrs. Thompson asked who would like to read their reflection on Charlotte's Web. To everyone's surprise, Emily raised her hand. She stood up, heart pounding, and began to read. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she continued, she found her rhythm. She spoke about friendship, about the beauty of sacrifice, and how Charlotte's words had moved her. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before her classmates began to clap. From that day on, something shifted inside Emily. She wasn't afraid of English anymore. Instead of dreading it, she embraced it. She started reading more books, each one unlocking new words and ideas. She wrote stories in her journal, practicing the grammar rules she once hated. Words like simile and personification became tools she used to paint pictures in her writing. Michael, Sarah, and David noticed the change in Emily. "You've really improved," David said one day. "Your writing is incredible." Emily smiled, not because she wanted a praise, but because she knew how far she had come. As the school year went on, Emily's love for English grew. She joined the school's book club, where she met others who shared her passion. Together, they discussed novels, short stories, and poems. English was no longer a foreign language to Emily. It was her companion. Years passed, and Emily continued to excel in English. She graduated from high school with honors and decided to pursue a degree in English literature, as she wanted to help others who, like her, had once struggled with the language. In college, Emily met professors who deepened her love for the subject. Dr. Anderson, her literature professor, introduced her to the works of Shakespeare, Dickens, and Austen. Each new text was a challenge, but Emily had learned not to shy away from challenges. She dissected the words, analyzed the themes, and wrote essays that earned her top marks. But Emily never forgot her roots. She remembered how difficult English had been for her, and how Mrs. Thompson's encouragement had changed her life. After graduating, Emily decided to become an English teacher, hoping to inspire the next generation of students. On her first day as a teacher, Emily stood in front of her class. She looked at the students, some eager, others nervous, and she saw herself in them. "English is not just a subject," she told them. "It's a way to understand the world and share your voice with others." As the weeks went by, Emily's students grew more confident. They wrote stories, read novels, and learned to appreciate the beauty of language. One student, a shy girl named Lily, reminded Emily of herself. Lily struggled with English, but Emily was patient, just as Mrs. Thompson had been with her. Slowly, Lily began to improve, and one day, she raised her hand to read aloud. Emily watched with pride as Lily read, her voice growing stronger with each sentence. When she finished, the class applauded, and Emily smiled, knowing that she had come full circle. English, once a source of frustration, had become the key to Emily's future. Through perseverance, guidance, and passion, she had unlocked its power, and now she was helping others do the same. And so, the story of English continued, one student, one word, one sentence at a time.